Good morning, CFCamp 2023. My name is Richard Herbert, and we're going to be talking about multi-site, multi-context site hosting with Lucee and CommandBox. And if you don't mind, I'd like to try and record the day. And if nobody has any objections, hello.
I'll take it.
Yeah? Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely. Appreciate it. Getting to know you. Always good to know what your audience is. So who hosts on Windows? Okay. I have the wrong set of slides. IIS, yes. Apache, okay. You may have to come and see me after. Nginx, yeah. Linux, okay. Oh dear. But do you develop on Macs? Okay, all right, I have the wrong set of slides. And who has little or no experience of CommandBox? Okay, so we have some people here that know those environments. Okay, well, I thought you'd all be Windows users, but don't be fooled by the badge on this laptop. We've got the Windows side covered. So a little bit about me. Richard Herbert, there's my email address. You'll get the more information at the end. Originally, I started in architecture and structural engineering, the real architecture, the bricks and mortars type, working on airports and offshore oil rigs. And I got into computing via structural analysis. So, in the early days of computing, using computers for structural designs. Moved into IT management via computer-aided design, which I got involved in. And if you were at the podcast yesterday, I'm quite proud that I registered my first domain name, that InfoWebCo UK, back in '95 when it was free in the UK to, yeah? Okay, because it was managed by the academic community back in those days. And I've been a freelance web developer, majoring in Cold Fusion since 2001. I've also worked as a dedicated Scrum Master. And I did a presentation here in 2017 on getting stuff done the Agile way, which you can also get. I currently work for a company called Gumtree Motors. I'll talk about those a little bit later on. And little known facts, I played basketball for England, back in the 70s, mind you, as a schoolboy. And but I still play basketball now. And I play on what's called the Masters circuit. So I was playing in a tournament a couple of weekends ago. In a 60-plus age group. And I was more than just inside that 60-plus aspect. So that's the end of the colourful slides, which I culled from my more talking type of presentation that I did in 2017. So these are going to be a little bit more sort of dull, because it's technology and it's coding, and I couldn't find any witty backgrounds to go with the dry topic. So I joined this company, Gumtree Motors. So they're if anybody's familiar with Auto Trader, it's a similar organization than that. We get a lot of feeds coming in from dealers, car dealers. We process a lot of those feeds. We then redistribute them out to eBay. We were part of eBay back in the day. And also to other things like, obviously, Gumtree and then other syndication sites. So we have a lot of data coming in and a lot of data going out, and I joined them this time last year. So there's over 30 CFML sites that they have across the different pre-production and production environments. And most of it is internally facing. We've got some internally facing sites, back office type of websites you can imagine. We do a lot of this feed processing, information coming in, being churned over and then being spat out. We have a back office for the stock management for the dealers as well, so they can upload their stock via the back office. And we do some white-labeled websites for dealers as well. And when I joined, being a contractor, you take any job that's going and you say, yes, I can do this, and yes, I can do that. And when I got there, it was lovingly known as the heritage estate. Not legacy, which I love that. So it's not a legacy, it's heritage, so that sounds really nice. And nice and warm and fluffy. And I thought, okay, so let's have a look, see what they've actually got here. And, okay, Lucee 5.2, that's not too bad, there's a few sort of versions out of it. Then I looked at some other sites that they got. Oh dear. Cold Fusion 8. Now there's a few problems, but it gets better. Anybody remember Blue Dragon? Oh, I thought all the Blue Dragon people were dead. But no, they've got bluedragon.net there as well. And that was a really real revelation. So I said to them, look, we've got to move off of this stack, for security, if nothing else, and, being able to maintain it. We had lots of problems with the Adobe Cold Fusion, with the WSConfig. Anybody's familiar with that? That program that joins them up with the IIS, because the old version of IIS had been moved off. It was a nightmare. So I said, we've got to move to Lucee, 5.3 as it was, and then 5.4's come out. And obviously today, maybe it should be, Lucee 6. If Gert gets his way and gets it shipped before the end of the month, would be interesting. So what are we going to look at today? Some of this stuff you may know, some of it may not be relevant now, it seems, but we're going to set up some websites with IIS, and we're going to use this service, this software product called Bonco, which helps to configure and join and provides these interaction with what's called AJP. And we're going to install CommandBox and that sort of stuff. It won't be from first principles, this presentation. There's a little bit of hands-on stuff for mine, quite a lot of screen grabs, so that if you want to come back and look at the presentation afterwards, you've got that visual indication. And then we're going to connect them together with Boncode, AJP, Apache JServe protocol, and ModCFML. And we're going to extend the CommandBox stuff to actually make this multi-site aspect really work well. And we might then go on to CommandBox Server Manager, Service Manager, I always get that wrong, which is a way of keeping the sites up and running post restart and that sort of stuff. And if we get time, we'll talk about CommandBox 6 and the Pro. Not that, there's a lot of information out, but it would have been nice to be able to share some information around that. So, step one, setting up IIS. We need to create some websites. We need to have what's called a sort of a primary server context, and then we can have these secondary web contexts. So these are where all our other sites, as you sort of said, as I said earlier, we've got lots of sites. Create them there. And we need to make sure we've got the .NET version correct and that the server defaults are set up correctly. But at this stage, there'll be no web config at this particular point. So for those of you that may not have set up IIS, so this is the, where you start, because out of the box, because what I've got on here is I've got an instance of Windows running under Parallels, so it allows me to run that. So there's obviously sort of out-of-the-box Windows install, and that's how you... Ooh, yes, keep going. Why don't you come down? Why is that not happening? Okay, let's try the keyboard. Okay, so we need to select IIS in our and turn it on as a feature in Windows. We get a bog standard local host for the default site. And then we want to create our other site. So what we're doing here is is this still working? Yeah. So we're creating this server context. And you see that I use local host. as a top-level domain. Not many people know that localhost like .com and example and that sort of stuff is a top-level domain that you can use. And the great thing is that it always binds to 127.0.0.1. So you don't have to go and monkey around with your host file. If you create a website as a subdomain, from the top-level domain of localhost, then you haven't got to worry about keeping your host file up to date with whatever little test sites that you've created. So that's a really useful feature that I've found. And it's all the fairly sort of standard install location. And now we're creating the next one, which is going to be our web context, our first web context. And then this is a second one that we're creating here. And obviously the path and the names are different. And the next aspect that you need to be careful about, especially if you're using this on an existing Windows server, you need to make sure that this .NET version, as I mentioned before, is on version 4. Otherwise, the BOM code connections won't work for you. And then obviously at the end of the day, what you end up with is a website that doesn't work because there's no default document in there. So let's go back to that. And now the wonders of computing now that I can run a Windows install in here. And so here is our standard, oh dear, what's this? You'll have to excuse me if I'm very Windows naive. It's not my normal working environment. So this is our default website that comes when we've created the IIS setup. And then here is our first server context. So there's obviously there's no default document in here. But if we come back here and get to my next aspect and copy this across to here and replace all of those. So this is sort of the canned aspects. We now can refresh here, and all we've got is an index.cfm, an index.html, and we have that for the other contexts as well. So we've got those sites up and running, okay? And all it is our 3 websites, so our server context and our 2 web contexts. And these 2 web contexts are going to be our websites that we're going to be serving content out to the outside world. And all we've got is just a regular, straightforward index.html. So that's fairly straightforward. We've got our websites up and running. So the next part of the story is BOM code. And BOM code is a software that helps to provide access to what's called the AJP protocol, which is a way in which you can expose a site through the port number, and we go through an installer, which once again I've captured some screenshots from to talk through those. But we need to make sure when we're setting it up, we're setting up the various aspects of it. So we'll need to have the .NET Framework 4.5. Not quite sure what that's all about. We need to then bind it to the local host on traditionally the port is 8009. You can use any other free port that's available. We don't want remote access to this because this is going to be a fundamental service. So we need to make sure that we disable the remote access. We need this header data support, and to be able to provide that way of passing through the information about which site is making that connection. We're going to want to choose which specific sites. We're going to select the default website. we're going to want to deselect JSP unless you're actually working on anything involved with JSPs, and make sure that the CFM and CFCs are being supported. And we need to enable the application pool permissions for if you want to have any virtual directories. Now, a warning. I'm not going to run this piece of software. I might just go through the various screens. I won't go through to the actual last submit button, because it does take a lot of time. And even when you think it's dead, have patience. And some more patience. And eventually it will run through. So this is the first prompt you'll get, which will be about the .NET framework. So this is obviously required for this bond code to actually work. Oh, this doesn't work, does it? Oh, dear. I'm going to be locked here now. So then this is the next screen that will be provided for us. So traditionally, like I say, it's used as on localhost on 8009. You can, like I said, use any other port. We don't want to enable, because that's normally enabled by default, the remote access. And we want to enable the, there it goes. I'm not seeing this. Yeah, the header support and the IP. And then some people like to, if you remember from the WSConfig days, to enable it for all sites. Personally, I prefer to be a little bit more choosy and just make sure that I know exactly what sites I've enabled for this. And what you'll get presented with this is obviously the default website, which is what you get for iOS. But if you remember, we've created those 3 other websites as well, the server context and the web context. I usually just let it install into the default website, and then so I manually can control the next part, the settings that need to go onto here. Here, once again, we're disabling the JSP side and making sure that the CFM, CFC aspect is being supported, and then we're going to be enabling for the virtual directory support. And then you hit the final install, and then you get the finish button. So what I've got here, so I've already sort of downloaded onto this Windows image the AJP, and all it is just a zip file of this content, and just a personal preference, I tend to just put it in underscore folders below here. And then this is what you'll see as this gets unpacked from that zip file. And what we want is the connector setup. Tend to run these things as administrator. And then, hopefully this is big enough just to read. Agree to the conditions. And then here we are, choosing the local host in 8009. We don't want to have remote access because we're going to be secure, but we do want to enable these 2 features for allow it to communicate. I don't want to install it on all sites. We just want this one, and not interested in JSP, and we are interested in having virtual directories. And like I said, I'm not going to go to this next part, otherwise we're going to be ages. Just as a general note, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them. I'm reserved the right to sort of say, I'm going to come up to that in a minute, or see me afterwards, because I don't know the answer. But happy to take any questions during the course. So that's the bond code side sorted. Next thing, we're going to be installing CommandBox. And it sounds like most people have got some experience with this. Fairly straightforward, whether you want to choose with or without the JRE. I tend to take it with the JRE because it's just simpler. Mac users, hopefully you're familiar with Homebrew. Great package manager for the Mac. Works really well with here. It's just a simple brew install CommandBox. and it'll install it for you. You can also run the bleeding edge, so I'm sort of playing around with CommandBox 6 on there. There's a lot of sort of installation information in here that I've been sort of maintaining on the Mac side for this to make sure, because Brad's not that interested on the Mac side. But one of the things that we want to do is, I always do, is this CommandBox properties file. And you put this next to the box.exe in the Windows sense, and the binary on the Mac. And this is a really good way of controlling where CommandBox will actually create your server artifacts in. So if you've got multiple servers. And I like to be in control of that. I don't want that going into, because by default it will go into your home folder on the box for your account. And obviously if you're putting this onto a server in production, you don't really want that there. You want to have that in a more defined position that anybody can make use of. So this is quite a useful file to do. And all you need to do there, the important thing is that this file is case sensitive for whatever reason. So it needs to be lowercase. And then inside this file, you just have a simple one-liner, CommandBox_home, and where you actually want it. It can be an absolute or a relative path. I like to try and keep all my paths sort of relative whenever I can, so that it's transportable across different machines and servers. And then in Windows, what I call in the office, the CommandBox terminal. So is when you double click on the box exe, it brings up a terminal. So I call it the CommandBox terminal. And quite useful aspect of this is I pin it to the taskbar, and I set it. So if you look at the properties of the actual pinned item in the taskbar, you can specify where it's going to open in. And that's really useful, I find, to actually, you'll see later on where the server context home is. And then always like to try and run it as administrator. And on the Mac, I don't know if you know, you can use sudo to run as root. And there's a flag called -e, or -e, which allows you to get any environment variables out from the host operating system and have those available within the JVM context that you've actually running your sites on. And then we'll do a sort of server start. So once again, simple sort of set of screen grabs here rather than actually go through it all. This is going to be your download page. Oh, I do hate doing this. And then when you fire up for the first time, you can see that it's getting my library path here, and it's doing the installation. Once it's installed, this is how at 5.9 you can see now that with 5.9 it's now providing the .env and the CFconfig support. There's been some updates. I'm not too happy with this latest version, because I'm having issues with having the environment file up outside of the web root, but I need to do some more investigation and pass that information on to Brad. And then the next thing I always do, like I said, is to CD into that directory where it's going to be. And then this is where the properties of that pinned exe is. So here's what I want to start in this direction. And then with the advanced button, you get into this to run as administrator. And then the next thing we want to actually be doing is setting up our server JSON file. And you can obviously write this manually or with the facilities of CFconfig. And so we can set the name of our server context. And we can, personally, I don't like the browser to be open, so I like to set that to false. And we're going to set where our web host is going to be called, and the port we're going to use with 8080, and where the web root is going to be, and the AJP is going to be enabled, so this is part of the connections between your CommandBox and the outer IIS. What port number is going to be used? If you remember, that's that 8009 that we set up with bond code. And we're going to enable ModCFML, and we're going to have this shared key or secret, which we'll come on to a little bit later. And then we can do a server start. And then when we do that, we find out, oh no, we haven't actually, we haven't got a password set up for this. So we're going to obviously need to set up a password for this. So once again, there are different ways of doing it. You can set it up in the whole of the CommandBox level, but I prefer to do it in this way. So we're actually setting the password here for this particular context. But you'll need to do a server restart after that, because then it will come back in. And then, here we go. We've got our settings, and we're through and signed into our server. Now, the other aspect that I want to show here is at the bottom here, it shows what context that it's actually got available to us. And at the moment, obviously, we'd only have that one. So let's have a look at that. I find it a bit more reliable in terms of access to services. I mean, you would possibly, in a production environment, have a dedicated service account for it, which you could obviously then have so the question is why is running it as administrator? Yes, you would tend to have a service account which you would lock down a lot tighter, but I don't want to get too distracted in. Yeah. Yes. No. Yeah. No. Will has some good points there in terms of the security aspects. It is worthwhile and a better situation to have a dedicated service account for that, where you can control those. So. And then where are we with this situation? So once we've got our host here, and we've got our web config sorted, and sorry, I'm just making sure that I've got to the right step. Here we go. Let's copy these over here as well. And we're going to copy this CommandBox properties file that I'd created earlier. And I've expanded the CommandBox box.exe into this location. Okay, and so this file just has this CommandBox home. And here is our task. Our box.exe that I've put into the taskbar, and here's the properties for it. Oh, I've opened it. Oh well. I have to right-click on this to get to the properties, and then you can see where we've got the where I'm having the to start in, and is this one is a run as administrator in this situation. But I agree with what Will is saying here. So here's our CommandBox terminal, and here I've captured a lot of these files so that I can make things a little bit quicker for myself. And we can, oh, it doesn't work this does it? Yeah. Okay, So that's great. So that's set all those things up for us. We can look then into our server context, and we see we've got it's created our server.json file for us, and here is all those settings that have been run in that we talked about earlier, insofar as the host, where the web root is, enabling the AJP, and the ModCFML. It's got another. Okay, something's not gone right there. That shouldn't be in this location. All right, we'll step over that for the moment. And so if we do our server start, we are going to get that context coming up. We're looking for, down in this bottom corner, the service being started, which never starts as quickly as you want when you're in front of a group of people who are all looking at what you're doing. Here we go. And then hopefully now we can come back here and look at our server context. Okay, we've only done half the job. We'll come on to that in a minute. And now we're here with the administrator. Yeah, and we need the next part of the story, which is the BON code settings. And bear with me. Did it not? Did I have that already open somewhere? Did that not? Okay, did I miss something here? Did that not start on that port number? Okay. That's just for this, isn't it? Okay. Okay, the presenter's curse. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's on 8080. Okay, all right. We'll try and push on and see if my other canned bits of code will help us. Because what we've now got here we're going to copy, we've copied from our default website, we've copied over this bin folder. And within there, we've got the DLLs that are used, and we've also got this settings file. And this is how it sort of comes directly from BON code in the standard sort of settings. So we haven't got this sort of secret aspect part of it. Now I need to find out where that's gone to. Okay, where are we at with this? Okay, that's what the one we want now. Let's get to the same situation. Right, so hopefully this will work. Okay. And let's Let's do a restart. Okay, back on track. Okay, so now here we have our Lucee administrator for the server context. And then if we actually went to the server administrator, the web context administrator for one of the other contexts, there we are. Here's our blue sort of environment, if you're familiar with that. And if we now go back to our server context, we'll see that we've got that extra context. Is it coming off the bottom of the screen? There we go. The other context here for our web context. And we can do that as well for the other sites. Now we come to the ModCFML stuff, which is what we did before. So this is the missing link that actually joins it all together and provides the ability to get our CommandBox talking via AJP to our web server, in this case IIS. So now it's part of Bond code for Windows. Obviously Mac can't make use of Bond code, but there is a project ModCFML for that. The thing to note there is they've only just got an Intel processor ModCFML. It's quite easy actually to create the one for the ARM chip. I mean, this is an Intel chip. My other one is an ARM chip, Apple Silicon, and it's quite easy to create those. And you need to have this secret, and you put it in this Bond code settings file. And then for Mac users in Apache, like I said, I can show you those later, we need to put that in our Apache setup file. And we need to add it to our server JSON. And we do the stop, and then we can do a start with a verbose. So mindful of the time, I want to get on to the next aspect. We have got here in our websites, we have in our Bond code setting here. So here's our setting. So this is our ModCFML secret that we need, which isn't part of the standard thing. And then here is the secret that I've chosen. And then also this needs to marry up with our server JSON, which is our shared key here in our ModCFML shared key aspect. So those are the two parts. So this is a sort of a security aspect to make sure that there can't be anything else getting in between those situations. Right, I want to make sure I speed up a bit more. So what we need to also look at is ways that we can extend CommandBox, and we can choose different engines to use. We can choose which JVM we want to use. We can also use some runwar arguments. This is quite useful to make it case insensitive if you've running in those environments. Environment variables, they're really useful, and we can set it up once again with this server set command. Here I've decided I want my environment variables up one level from the web root, and we can capture a whole lot of either environment variables set here, and we have this option here by saying box server, and then we can actually poke into the server JSON file various values. So we can actually use that way of doing that. And then the next aspect we want to try and do is to set up the different web contexts and actually use those as a path, which we will use later on. So we can using CFconfig, and we can use that to create config files for our different sites. So for this one, this is going to be our default server context, and then we want to have different ones for our different web context, because you may want to have different administrator settings for the other websites that you have. And what I'm going to do here is to actually show that we can have different settings in those situations. And then we can use the command line to do that. We can reference an environment variable here. And you'd like to think you could actually do this, but this last example here won't work for you because of this colon, but we can actually put it in manually. Right, so let's have a look at that. How are we going for time, people? I can't remember when this is supposed to end. 2 minutes. Oh! Right, let's try and jump along. No. Thank you. You're coming to tell me to hurry up, aren't you? Oh, come on. No, that's not going to work. I know. Hurry up time. Yeah, I know. I was missing that. Right, let's try that again. You don't want to go to lunch. Right, so hopefully now what we've got here, we've got our environment file up at the high level, which is setting our environment variables, which we can use. And then we have inside here, we have our server JSON, which has got our CFconfig. And then what we can actually do then also is to run these commands in here. No, can't do that. And then if we come back and revisit our server JSON, we've got those files in here. I'm rushing here now. Let's do a restart just to be sure. And that should come up relatively quickly. Please come up relatively quickly. Okay. And so for our main server context, Windows file copying. That might be the issue. All right, apologies. Let's do that. That's not going to work either, is it? Okay, you'll have to trust me. Because we're running out of time. Okay, server manager, service manager, we can set up with these commands here, which allows the service to be restarted after a server restart. I'm not going to have a chance to talk about CommandBox 6, apologies, but the information is all out there. This is Brad's presentation that he did at the other Into the Box. Here's some resources that you can click through to. Yeah, I apologize for time running over, but I'm happy to take any questions outside of the meeting at lunchtime or wherever's. And here's my sort of contact details. Okay. Apologies, that's run over a little bit. We had a little technical difficulty in the middle.